Hello guys, good morning. In this video, we will see how we can deploy our ASP.NET Core application on IIS. That's a on-premises deployment or the local IIS deployed on your machine. We'll talk about that. Of course, this application, which is ASP.NET Core app, will connect to the database and then it will perform some CRUD operations. So I already have the application which is ready with me, which uses ASP.NET Core 7.0, and then it also make a use of Microsoft Entity Framework Core to connect to the database server. So this is what the database that I do have, that is our company, and it has so many tables. I have used the database first approach to generate the context class with Entity Framework Core, and the connection string which we get it inside our on configuring method, right, of our context class, that I have taken it from here and I have added this into this app settings.json file, which is the best practice. Then furthermore, I have registered the DB context, in short our company context class, into the dependency injection container, and then further the controller is added. This is my department controller, and my company context is then injected with a constructor injection into this department controller. I also have use for performing the CRUD operations here for the department controller, and I'm going to run this application. So this is what the ASP.NET Core app that I have. So this is what the index for the department. I'm going to click on create here, and then I'm going to add some data here. Okay, and see here something like that. Okay, and then I say create. So this is creating, and then of course here the data is being shown into my table. So this is what do I have. Now the important thing is that I want to deploy this application on IIS. Now the question arises is that how are we going to do that? We have to keep one thing in mind, that ASP.NET Core is cross-platform. So we can host it on IIS, on Docker, right, and other platforms. We can do that. Now, typically when we see IIS here, this is what my IIS, right? And if I take you to this, this is my IIS version on Windows 11, right? So Internet Information Services version 10.0. This is what that I do have. Now, the thing is that here, when we know that like our traditional ASP.NET apps, which are targeted to .NET Framework, these applications can be directly deployed over there on IAS by creating the application pool. We create an application pool and then we select the .NET Framework version, which works in an integrated mode into an HTTP pipeline. And then we do have HTTP handler, HTTP modules. The typical objects which are used for request processing, right? They are already configured specific to IIS. They are already there. How can we find that? So if I go here to turn Windows on or off, or if in short, you go to Control Panel and Programs and Features, you can go there and then you can see that here the .NET is installed, and then if I take you to this IIS here, we do have the application development features, and then the .NET 3.5 and then ASP.NET 3.5 and ASP.NET 4.8 is already installed. So corresponding worker process of for ASP.NET is already there, that is targeted to .NET Framework. Okay. So this makes the deployment of ASP.NET targeted to .NET Framework, that is web forms, ASP.NET MVC targeted to .NET Framework, as well as Web API, ASP.NET Web API again targeted to .NET Framework. This deployment becomes much more easier for us, right? But here, .NET Core is cross-platform, and then how we are gonna deploy it. So what you need to do is that the first thing first, we need to have the ASP.NET Core hosting module that must be installed on our machine. So if I take you over here to Google and say that .NET 7 SDK download, right? If I do that here, we'll find that ASP.NET Core Runtime 7.0.12. This is there. We'll have to download this, and then we'll have to install it. So this is ASP.NET Core Runtime that enables you to run existing web server applications. On Windows, we recommend installing the hosting bundle, which includes .NET Runtime and IIS support. So this is our ASP.NET Core Module V2, which is supported supported the ASP.NET Core deployment on IIS. Okay, so we need to have that. Of course, when you install the SDK, when you download and install the SDK, we will have this available out there. But otherwise, the recommendation is that like we should download this based upon whatever the Windows architecture that you have, and then you can get this thing on your machine. And IIS will support it. Now the question arises over here is that how should we find out the deployment, or how should we go for the deployment? So the first thing first, what we will have to do is that we will have to create an application pool. So I'm going to go for add application pool. I'm going to give the name that as sample app pool, right here. And now I'm not going to select any .NET CLR version. Instead, I'm going to make it as no managed code, right? So this is going to make sure that I'm going to deploy the application, which is not working with a .NET or ASP.NET runtime integrated mode. I'm going to make this as okay. Yes, this is added. And then what I'm going to do is that I'm going to right click on the sites here. I'll say add website, right? So as like I do have, okay, various websites that I do have it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to have add website here, and then I'm going to give the site name as I'll say that sample website, right? You know that like whenever we give the site name, the same app pool is created. So you make sure that carefully you select the application pool that has been created by you. So we have created sample app pool here. Okay, right. You the physical path. So this is the folder where our build files will be stored. And of course, we have web config file. Yes, it's a surprise, but yes, web.config file is needed because the the deployment on IIS, right, on a particular port, it will become a public endpoint on which the request will be accepted, right, from the outside world. And then that web.config file will navigate it to the .NET exe, because .NET exe is the one which is responsible to host or execute our ASP.NET Core app. So I'm now going to have the physical path here. So let me go to this here. I'm going to create a folder. I'll say that, okay, let me check my path again. Right. So, yeah. So I'm going to select this. I'll say that my deploy. This is what my folder is. Oops. Let me rename this. I just say here my deploy. Okay. Right. And then I'm going to give the port here. I'll say that port is 8040. You'll have to make sure that that's free. Right. I'm having HTTP, like can set the binding here, HTTP, HTTPS. I'm selecting HTTP here. Leave the host name blank. Okay. And here it's, I have to change this to 40. Right. Okay. Yes. So this is what is it. Right. So I have a sample website that is there. Now under this website, can create an application. So I'm going to right click on this, and then I'm going to say add application here. I'll say that sample app over here, and then I'll target to the physical path here. So again, I'm going to go to this. I'll say that my app deploy. Okay, right. I'm doing it. Fine. So this is what is generated. So here we have created the uh, IIS app pool, right, which is no manage. So technically, what is going to happen over here is that if at all I want to show this in a kind of a small diagrammatic form here, right? So our IIS, right? This is what our IIS is. Let's say here the web server, right? Of course, and what do we are having over here is that we are gonna have the app pool right here, right? Our app pool, okay, which is now having the website deploy on it. Okay, so the website, right, this is on port 8040, right? And now here I'm going to deploy my ASP.NET Core app. Now we know that ASP.NET Core application that gets executed into the .NET exe right here. Okay, so I'm going to have here the .NET.exe, right? Is there? So what we need to do is that like whatever that application DLL that we have, right? So my app DLL, whatever this DLL is, which is my ASP.NET application, which is to be executed over here inside it. So now from the public outside world, the request will be accepted over here. Now with this website, we are going to have ASP.NET Core module v2. Okay, right? What this is going to do is that it is going to redirect the request over here to .NET exe, and where my application.dll will be executed with whatever model view controller, data access, okay, all that will be executed over here, and then the response will be sent back. This is the response over here, right? So whatever the output response, it will be given back, and then from that here, right? So this is what it's going to have is the response, correct? So this is it. So here we are having the .NET exe, which is also going to have its execution on internal port, right? So uh, from that internal port, the request will be on that internal port, the request will be accepted and the response will be sent back here. And then the if the response will be sent back from 8040 back to the outside world over here. This is what is it. So this is again a very classic concept of the reverse proxy here, which has been discussed a lot with ASP.NET Core environment here, the reverse proxy, correct, where the response will be sent back. This is how the overall structurization for the deployment. Now I'm going to go back to my code here, and then let's say I'm going to uh, deploy this application. So let me stop it, and then I'm going to go for the release mode over here, and then let's say I'm going to build it. I'm going to create a build for that. Okay, so the build will be created over here, right? And then if I again take you to the folder structure here, so I'm going to have bin release here 7.0, correct. And then this is what that core exe, this is what my .NET exe, where my app DLL will be executed. So if I double click on this here, so it's available on port 5000 HTTP here, it's there, correct. So now if I go back and then over here, if I say HTTP colon slash slash localhost, okay, colon 5000, right, this is where it is. So nothing a bootstrap and all this, all those classic look is not coming here, but the app is executing here, and this is what has been displayed. So this is what my .NET exe, the internal port which has been given to us by ASP.NET Core, where the execution is going to take place. But now what we'll have to do is that we will have to map it, right? We will have to map this here with the port which we have registered for our ASP.NET Core app, right, which has been hosted into the sample website. So what we will be doing is that we will be actually seeing that deployment over there into the next video. Stay with me, guys. Thank you very much.